Next on Worcester News Tonight, winter weather expected overnight. Details on what drivers should look out for during tomorrow morning's commute. And Dudley town officials consider whether to allow an Islamic cemetery to be built on a former farm. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Andy Madison. Cities and towns across Massachusetts preparing for snow and ice, which could impact the morning commute. In Boston, they've already canceled school. Here in Worcester, the city has already put a parking ban into effect. It began just moments ago at 10, meaning cars have to be off major city streets so plows can clear snow. The town of Webster has also put a parking ban in effect. Some areas of central Massachusetts could see as much as 8 inches of snow, with heavier snow expected in the eastern part of the state. One place that can use the snow is ski resorts. Today's ski ward in Shrewsbury was closed, the staff explaining they did so to preserve the snow they already have. Pete Bouchard will have a look at how much snow we can expect coming up in the full forecast. Dudley residents packed tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting over a proposed Islamic cemetery. The Islamic Society of Greater Worcester wants to develop 55 acres of land in Dudley into a cemetery. Some neighbors have opposed the proposal, citing concerns over contamination of well water and its location. During tonight's presentation, one of the men said the cemetery could hold 16,000 grave sites. Worcester police have charged a man in connection with the death of a man whose body was found on the train tracks last week. Earlier today, Worcester police issued an arrest warrant for 27-year-old Albert Henderson of Southbridge. The body of 74-year-old Hector Ramos was found last Sunday on the Providence and Worcester railroad tracks. He had extensive trauma to his head and face. Worcester police said DNA analysis of blood found on Henderson's jacket matched that of the victim. A witness told police that the suspect had been acting erratically the night of Ramos's death and appeared to be in a rage. It's not clear yet when Henderson will appear in court. As we reported last night, the Worcester Police Department is receiving a $500,000 state funding for efforts to reduce youth violence. Money comes from a Shannon grant and should help an initiative the city started last year. Patricia Nicholas has a look at what people who work with the city's youth are saying about the funding.
Melissa Watson is the owner of 1000 Watts Barbershop on Main Street. She knows firsthand the effects gang and youth violence has on families in Worcester. She has been doing her part to help an age group she says the city overlooks.
Kids come out here and they're like, oh, they don't have no money for haircuts, so we'll cut their hair and then we'll make them clean up a little bit. So they're not out there trying to sell drugs or rob somebody trying to get a haircut.
For the 10th year, the state has awarded the city with a $500,000 grant. This year, it will help the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative, which the city established last year. The money will target youth ages 12 through 17.
It really funds a whole range of programs, from police programs to community-based youth programs and employment programs.
That age group, we could bring them in so you could be like, don't do the gang stuff. Let's try to making big brothers to little kids or get big brothers and sisters for them.
Elliot Rivera works with young boys in the community. He says he hopes the grant money will be used correctly.
What does this mean? Is this going to be funding that's going to be used to, oh, let's get these kids off the street in terms of let's lock them up and let's do these things? Or is this funding going to be like, let's be preventative, let's be empowering, let's get these kids support? You know, let's use this funding to figure out what's really going on with these kids and help them.
Lori Ross has firsthand knowledge on what's going on with the youth in the city. She conducted the research for the city's Youth Violence Prevention Initiative. She says the program has so far been successful, but there's still more she would like to add.
We're looking at ways to intervene really early so that if a child is a witness to violence, how do we begin more of a supportive relationship for the young person and the family rather than only having a police response?
Patricia Nicholas, Worcester News Tonight.
The state medical examiner's office completed autopsy reports in 2 high-profile cases involving children who died while under DCF supervision. In one case, 2-year-old Avelina Conway Coxon, the autopsy reports list both the cause and manner of death as undetermined. Avelina was the 2-year-old girl who died after being found unresponsive in an Auburn home last August. Worcester County DA's office says the investigation in this case is ongoing. And in the case of Jeremiah Oliver, the medical examiner's office has determined his death is a homicide. Jeremiah lived in Fitchburg with his mother. He went missing in late 2013. His body was found in April of 2014 in a suitcase off of I-190 in Sterling. His mother, Elsa Oliver, already faces 9 charges. She's due back in court in 3 weeks. Her boyfriend, Albera Sierra, faces 13 charges. He is due back in court next week. Today is World Cancer Day. The day explores how everyone can do their part to reduce the global burden of cancer. Our Olivia Lemon spent the day at Holy Cross and gives us a look at how the baseball team is joining the fight against cancer.
For the 3rd year in a row, the Holy Cross baseball team is raising money for pediatric cancer research.
It's something that our team obviously, is super proud of, and obviously from a team standpoint, each of our guys recognize that every player is a valuable member of our family.
Coach Greg DeCenzo says one of his players is a pediatric cancer survivor. It makes the campaign even more important. So far, the team has raised more than $10,000 for the Versus Cancer Foundation.
Half of that money that we raise is going to go to Versus Cancer Organization. The other half is going to go to the UMass Memorial here in Worcester.
Everyone I feel has been affected by cancer at some point, whether it's a loved one, a family member, a friend. I think the most important thing is to know that these cancer survivors and people battling with cancer day to day, that they're not alone and that everyone's here for them.
On World Cancer Day, the team is reminded how important it is to get the word out to raise money.
We got the word out pretty quickly, and we were very adamant about it to make sure that the guys on the team were, again, emailing it to their family and friends, and we were very determined to raise a lot of money.
It really just makes us all very happy, that we can make other people happy.
Coach DeCenzo says raising such a large amount of money in less than 3 weeks shows how committed his team is.
Selfless individuals that compete their tail off on the field, but understand at the end of the day, it's a heck of a lot bigger than baseball. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle here.
Olivia Lemon, Worcester News Tonight.
Deplorable conditions inside an apartment where police made a drug arrest this week are shining a spotlight on a Worcester property owner. Our Brittany Schaefer has the details.
City inspectors found sanitary code violations at 22 out of 25 properties owned by Richard Magdus. Magdus owns the apartment building where police found vermin and feces during a drug arrest last week. Worcester's Director of Housing and Health Inspections says her department was already looking into complaints.
We've received a lot of reports from our Crime Watch meetings, other public meetings about activity at some of the properties. We conducted inspections based on the minimum standards of human habitation, and we found numerous violations. Those included trash in the yard, trash in the hallways. We found evidence of squirrels in one building, rodents in several buildings.
Wilson says they did not get permission to enter 3 apartments and were unable to get into the King Street apartment prior to the drug arrests. Wilson says Magdus was cooperative with requests to correct 61 violations.
He has been compliant with all of the enforcement letters that he received from our office.
Wilson says with the high number of violations, something needs to change with the way Magdus controls his properties.
There are other landlords in the city who are very successful and own property without having this many issues. So to me, that means that something should change.
One of the properties with violations was 15 Clapp Street. This tenant did not want to comment, but did say she lived there for 2 years and has never had a problem. A tenant of another Magdus property at 11 Norfolk Street agreed.
I've lived in that building for 6 years. I mean, it's not glamorous, but he fixes everything. The landlord comes and does what he has to do. I have not much complaints.
Brittany Schaefer, Worcester News Tonight.
According to the city, the property owner has resolved all the violations to date.